Hey guys, and welcome to the channel. Today we are going to make a Riesling with a Riesling base, and we're going to ferment that with a triple berry blend, which I'm really excited about. So that is going to be equal parts of raspberries, blackberries, and blueberries. Those three together, I expect to make a great fruit wine just by themselves, but we're going to do it with the Riesling base. So I'm even more excited to make it a little bit more complex, a little bit more interesting, right? What we're going to be using today is a actual Riesling concentrate, which I generally wouldn't use, but I've tried the Merlot from this company, and the company is pretty highly regarded. It's Coloma Frozen Foods, Nature's Blessed. All that's in this is going to be pure Riesling grape concentrated juice. There's nothing else. If you look at the ingredients here, Riesling grapes. And I've used their Merlot, like I said. Hold on. Actually, right here, I made a Merlot out of it. That's in the process right now of aging, and it actually came out really well. So I'm interested to see this Riesling base here. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to make about 2 gallons of it, hoping to end with 2 gallons. So we'll probably start in that 2.5 gallon range. What we're going to do first is get a pH reading on this because I'm interested to see what that is. I'll give that to you guys. This video will be slightly more in depth. I'm going to try to include some answers to some questions I've gotten regarding what kind of water to use, why I use the water that I use, pH levels, that kind of stuff. So what I'm going to do first is we're going to go ahead and get an initial hydrometer reading on this and see what that is. I want to get, for a Riesling, I'd like to get about a 12.5% alcohol, maybe 13, but 13 or lower for this Riesling. So let's go ahead and see what the hydrometer reading is, and let's go from there. All right, so before I get into the hydrometer reading, I did want to talk about some tools of the trade and also just a couple of the wine science questions I've been asked, and I hope to answer in this video. The first one is going to be with water. So this is 2 gallons, give or take, that we're going to use. And this is just regular old drinking water. And the reason that I use this, I got asked, why don't I use distilled water? The reason that I use this is, although it's purified, it still has calcium, magnesium, and essential minerals for the yeast in the fermentation process. And it also gives a better overall flavor for the wine, I think. I don't use distilled water for that reason, because it lacks the minerals needed for the winemaking process. So there's that. On the table here, we'll talk what we have. We have our mixed acid blend. We'll be adding that in at a 1/2 teaspoon per gallon. We have our candom tablets, so we'll be using to sanitize our wine, so to speak, and get rid of any wild yeast and anything else that might be in that must to create the best environment for our yeast in 24 hours to add. We have our Fermade K, which contains DAP, which is a jump starter for your must and your yeast to get fermenting. So we'll be using this at about 1/2 gram per gallon. And then we have our pectic enzyme, about 1/2 teaspoon per gallon. And what that does is it helps break down the overall fruit, pull out those juices, and also even kind of starts a little bit of the clearing process. And we'll talk about maybe that later. In front of us, I've got 12 pounds of equal parts of blueberries and raspberries and blackberries. And I have been asked, why don't I use fresh fruit from the produce section? And I will at times, but let me tell you my opinion on this. These frozen fruits, in my opinion and in my experience, are flash frozen at the peak of ripeness. You get the best juice and the best flavor out of the frozen type of fruit. And it's often cheaper, to be honest. So it saves you a little bit of money in making the wine. The fresh fruit, you're always gonna have a few raspberries or blackberries that make it into the must that may not have been as fresh as possible, may give an off flavor, off smells, things of that nature. And it's hard to kind of pick through them all. When it's frozen, you can almost be guaranteed that 100% of your fruit was frozen at the peak of ripeness, which is what we want. We want the best flavor and overall nose from that fruit into our wine. So that's why I use frozen fruit. Even if I do get fresh fruit, I will actually freeze it. And what that also does is it breaks down the skins, it cracks the skins, and it allows those cells to break down to release that juice even easier during the crushing process and during the fermentation process. So that's my overall thought process on these particular things. Here, I have a pH tester. I will be testing the pH of our overall must once we get it made today. And let's talk about some other tools that we have. All right, you will need some kind of a fermentation container. So this is a 6.5 gallon fermentation food safe bucket made for fermenting. So that's what I'll be using. You may need some sugar, and I'm not absolutely sure yet. I'm shooting for about 2 to 2.5 gallons, and it might need a little bit of sugar because I might have to add a little bit more water to get the volume, but we'll see as it goes on. You're gonna need your standard items that if you watch my videos, you know that I use. I have a sanitized must bag. We'll be crushing our fruit into this today with our silicone zip tie. And then I have my hydrometer and a mixing wand so that we can mix up, and our wine thief to be able to take some of the must out and put it into the hydrometer and test it as we go along. We have a bucket of sanitation in here with our Star San. And then we have my at-home, kind of professional grade, but at-home crusher. I love this thing. If you've seen it in my videos, it's linked down in the description, and this really does give you and pulls out all those nice juices and crushes the fruit really appropriately. So that's what we'll be using today. So let's get started. All right, so let's go ahead and pour in our concentrate. Look how thick and syrupy that is. That's awesome. Smells great too. All right, let's go ahead and get a gallon of water in there. I want to make sure we get all of our nice concentrate out of there. So what I'm going to do is pour a couple of times. I'm just going to pour water right into the container here, put the lid back on, and then just shake it up really good. Because I want to get all of that concentrate out of this bottle here. It looks like it's going to come out pretty easy. All right, so let's go ahead and get at least a gallon in so our hydrometer has a chance of even staying on the charts. All right, we're just gonna go ahead and incorporate the water and the Riesling. All right, so you can see that after adding both containers of our Riesling base, we are at 15% with 1 gallon of water. I'm gonna go ahead and add in about a half a gallon more. All right, and I'm just gonna kind of eyeball this and try to get about half of this gallon, give or take. And I'll be on the safe end. If you were to do the same and use the same jug that I'm using, I stopped right at the top of the sticker where it says drinking water there. So let's see what that does. All right, after we added that half gallon, you can't see there's some bubbles there right at the top of the wine or the must, not wine yet, right? And it's at 12.5%, so that is perfect. So a gallon and a half with 2 of those containers of the Riesling base, we're at 12.5%. And see this color of this Riesling? Now remember, this is a concentrate. Sure, it is only Riesling grapes, but this color of it, what I wanted to do is show you real quick Riesling that I picked straight from the vine myself and have aging. Very, very similar color. All right, so this is Riesling, the wine that I have aging. I put it in this carboy on October 9th. This is straight from the vine, from fresh Riesling grapes, pressed myself with 6 gallons sitting here. You can see the similarity in the color between this Riesling that was straight from the vine and the Riesling concentrate. Very, very close. It's pretty interesting. All right, so now we're gonna add our additives. And this is the point where I love these buckets. You can see we're right at 2 gallons, just a smidge underneath it probably. So we're gonna dose this in terms of additives for 2 gallons. Now we are gonna add in 12 pounds of our fruit into this, but that's not gonna change it so dramatically and displace it so dramatically that I would add any more additives in. There are times that we add in 18, 20 pounds or more of fruit, and that really displaces the amount of volume, and we need to add in some extra candom tablets because it'll really be used up by that extra fruit. But in this case, I like to use the least amount of additives as possible. So we're just gonna dose it for 2 gallons. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so remember our pectic enzyme, we're gonna go ahead and put in, this is a half teaspoon measure. There's 2 gallons. So we're gonna put in 2 half teaspoons of our pectic enzyme. Again, remember, this is gonna help us break down those fruits into juice. We're gonna add in our mixed acid blend. I already put in 1, so here's the second. This is gonna be our Fermade K, our yeast nutrient starter here, and I've got, it actually is 1.5 grams. I usually put in 0.5 grams of Fermade K per gallon, but I got 1.5 in here and I didn't feel like putting it back. It's not gonna hurt anything. If anything else, it'll just energize it a little bit more. And then we're gonna put in our 2 candom tablets. If you watch my videos or others, the easiest way to do this is just to go ahead and crush it between 2 spoons. All right, and then we have our second candom tablet here. Again, that potassium metabisulfite. Gonna clean up our must of any bacteria, any wild yeast. And I'm gonna go ahead and get all of this nicely and incorporated now with my drill, and then we're gonna go ahead and crush that fruit. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and crush the fruit now. You can see this in many of my videos. I use it every time I make wine, essentially, just that crusher. I'm gonna get that fruit nice and prepared for us and get all that juice out of there. So let's go ahead and get our fruit in. There's our first 4 pounds. Now look at that. That is why I like using frozen fruit. It is ripe, it is deep colored, it looks great, it smells great. I don't have to go through and pick out any of the fruit that may not be satisfactory or have mold or things of that nature. It just looks amazing. That's one thing I like about this crusher is the hopper is big enough. I'm gonna put in the 3rd bag here, which is gonna be 12 pounds of that total fruit. And this hopper is big enough to contain all 12 pounds worth. So just very convenient. And look at that fruit. That fruit, it smells amazing. I wish you guys could smell through the camera, but it literally smells amazing. This is gonna, I'm very excited about this with the, look at those colors. Just beautiful. One thing about winemaking and mead making, you just really come to appreciate your fruit and everything that it does. Just really great. Looks great, smells great. So let's go ahead and get it crushed up. All right, and there we go. All done. All right, so there you have it. There is our crushed fruit. This smells amazing. Between the Riesling and the the raspberries and the blueberries and the blackberries, I am extraordinarily excited to see how this is gonna turn out. And one thing that's very interesting also with Riesling and fruit wines for that matter is the aging process is generally a lot shorter than red wines. So Riesling, I'll probably be ready for this in 6 months, 3 to 6 months in terms of where it's going to be best at. 6 months more than likely. But with a red wine, it would be more of a grape varietal. You're looking at more of 12 to 18 to even longer in terms of actually being at its drinkable best, if you will. So here we go. I'm gonna go ahead and put this silicone, you saw me tie that up. I'm gonna go ahead and fold this over now, and I'm gonna put this silicone tie on. I love these things. They're absolutely awesome because they're reusable. And you just pull them, and that is going to cinch down and make sure that none of that fruit comes out and gets into the wine. We do have a couple of pieces of fruit that maybe made it in on the side of the must bag, but that's not a big deal. Those we'll get rid of all of those in our first rack. So let's go ahead and see our total volume now. All right, so as expected, you can see they're at 3 gallons with that fruit in there. A little over 3 gallons, not quite 3.5 gallons, maybe, I don't know, 3 1/4, a little less, but just over 3 gallons is our total must volume there. Hopefully that will keep us on track as we go through the racking processes to maintain at least 2 gallons at end. That's why I like to bottles at least 2 gallons, which is going to give us at least 10 full-size 750 milliliter bottles, or even 20 of the smaller splits or half bottles. All right, so what I'm going to do really quick before I leave it for the next 24 hours is go ahead and take a pH reading. I document everything behind the scenes in logs and have tons of logs. So this is nothing that you need to do. All right, so the initial pH of our must is 3.51, which is perfect. It's right in the middle between that 3.2 to 3.8 range, considering that where Riesling should be at and where fruit wine is generally at. And then we have some tartness in there from our raspberries and our blackberries. That's kind of what I expected. So pretty awesome, 3.51 on the initial pH. So let's go ahead and get the lid on this. We've got our airlock on there, and this is going to sit for the next 24 hours. We're gonna let the candom tablets do their thing and everything's set up, the pectic enzyme, everything get going. And then we're gonna add in our yeast tomorrow, 24 hours. So let's come back for that. All right, I wanted to jump in real quick here because when I watched the video back, I realized I forgot one thing to mention. And you all might have a question about that. You won't see wine tannin anywhere on the table. And that's because we're not gonna be adding wine tannin into this wine. Traditionally, we're gonna do this in a traditional way with Riesling. When Riesling is picked from the vine, the grapes are pulled off, the grapes are immediately pressed, the juice comes out, and that juice is fermented. So there's no tannin in Riesling wine because all the tannin is in the skins and in the stems of the particular grape. So in this case, we're going to treat it like a traditional Riesling wine. We're not going to add any wine tannin that we would normally add into our fruit wines because fruit wine also lacks tannin, but it is better with tannin. In this particular case, we're going to maintain the Riesling as you traditionally would without the tannin. We're going to ferment it off the skin, so to speak, and we're going to move forward like that. So I just wanted to mention that real quick in case anybody had any questions about why there's not any wine tannin on the table. All right, so this is why I always take a hydrometer reading after 24 hours. What happens is a lot of the juice comes out of the fruit that you put into the must. And a lot of that juice is just water-based. It's juice, but it's water-based. There's some sugars in there, but sometimes the juice that gets pulled out of that fruit over the crushing process and over the 24-hour period can actually affect your ABV. There's no fermentation taking place yet. The sulfites have really destroyed any of the yeast or wild yeast that was there that would have fermented the sugars into alcohol. So we're at about 10.5%, give or take. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in about 350 grams of sugar because I'm really shooting for that 12% Riesling, what we're going for. And by the way, you can see the color change in this is beautiful from those triple berry blend that's in there. So I'm going to go ahead and add 350 grams, check the hydrometer again, and then we'll get our yeast started here. All right, there you have it. After our 350 grams of sugar as anticipated, it put us at 1.094, which would give us, if we turn our hydrometer here, that puts us at about 12 right where we want to be. So we're at about 12.3, and I did the math. We're gonna, if we ferment down to dry 1.000, we'll be at 12.33% ABV, which is perfect. All right, here we are on the fermentation table here. So we're gonna go ahead, it's been 24 hours, actually more than 24 hours. It's been about 29 hours, 28 hours right now. So I know those sulfites are gonna be just fine to add our yeast starter. So this is gonna be about a half a cup of water, and this is just warmed up in the microwave. Right now it's at 117 degrees, which is perfect for dissolving 1 tablespoon of sugar, but we will not be adding in our yeast until that cools down to about 95 to 90 degrees. That's going to be where we like our yeast to be. We're going to be using the KV11116 today. I think that's going to be the best overall for this Riesling wine. So we're going to go ahead and let this cool. We'll let that sugar dissolve, and then we'll add our yeast, and I'll show you the rest of our yeast starter progress here. All right, so our hot water is cooled to about 91 degrees. Perfect timing to put in our yeast now. Like I said, I'm going to use the KV1116 for this. I think it's going to be perfect. For right now, all we're going to do is just sprinkle this on the top, the entire packet. Remember, there's sugar in there. And one thing I forgot to mention that you will add into here, and I'll make sure I put it in there, is just a smidge of that Fermade K if you want. You don't have to. It's not absolutely necessary. The sugar is going to give the yeast that what it needs to start prepping and getting ready for the must. But that little just pinch, and I mean like pinch, like 0.2 grams of DAP or just Fermade K will really get this jump started and helps out a lot. So there is 0.2 grams of Fermade K in there. All right, so just like that, I'm going to let it sit just on the top of that sugar water, if you will. And we're going to wait 15 minutes. And in 15 minutes, this is our must. I'm going to add in 2 tablespoons. I'll wait another 15 minutes. We'll add in another 2 tablespoons plus 2, so 4 tablespoons, 6 total at that point. And then we'll wait 30 minutes and we'll go from there. All right, so it's been 15 minutes. We're going to go ahead and add in our 2 tablespoons of our must here. There we go. And all we're going to do now is going to give it a little swirl. We're not shaking it yet. We're just trying to get the yeast nice and saturated without trying to spill all over my fermentation table here. All right, so it's been 15 minutes. You can see our yeast is bubbling in there. If you could hear it, see if I can put it up to the mic. It sounds like Rice Krispies, all good sign. Bubbles and that crackling. So we're going to put in about 4 tablespoons now of our must. We're just acclimating it to the environment of the must is what we're doing. Remember, there is going to be some acidity in here because we have raspberries, blackberries, and those are fairly acidic. So it's kind of slowly bringing our yeast into the environment it's about to go into. Give that a swirl, and now we'll let it sit for 30 minutes. All right, so it's been about 30-35 minutes now. We're going to add the yeast starter, the yeast bomb, like I like to call it, into our wine. So you can see that foam on top of there. That yeast is active. One thing this also does confirm for you is that it's not bad from the manufacturer. So you didn't receive it from, let's say, Amazon or wherever you order it from, and it's bad. So this shows that it's active. You can hear the Rice Krispies, so to speak. There is our must for our Riesling triple berry. I'm just going to pour that starter right into our must. And then we're also going to add in our Fermade O at this point. It's been 24 hours since we put our must in here. So we're going to add in our Fermade O. This is going to be 0.6 grams per gallon. So this will be 1.2 grams of Fermade O. Just going to sprinkle that in. Multiple use tasting glass there. Now what we're going to do is just gently kind of stir all this in. It's all going to incorporate on its own anyways as it sits here and starts to do its thing. So what's going to happen now is for the next 5 days, from this point moving forward, we will stir this once in the morning and once in the afternoon or nighttime. That's going to make sure that we induce that oxygen. If this were grapes, this would be called a cap, but it's a must bag. So we're pushing down our cap. We're going to keep that nice and wet. We'll also take the sides of this bag from time to time and just kind of wipe the walls to make sure nothing dries up there, because we don't want it to be drying there for 2 weeks and it can become unsavory, so to speak. All right, so it looks like Everything is nice and incorporated. Next 5 days, we'll stir this and we'll let it get down to that 1.000. All right, so today is the day we're going to go ahead and get this racked out of the primary fermentation into a secondary. We're at 0.993, which puts us at 13.51% alcohol based on our original value of our 12.5% after we added in some of that sugar into our must after 24 hours. So let's go ahead and get this racked. I have my tools out here today. We have the wine itself, obviously. We have the press. You don't need a press. I say this every video, but it is linked in the description. This just allows you to get a better bold wine out of it and get all that good wine out of there. But I'm going to go ahead and press this. You can just squeeze the bag if you want, or just throw the fruit away. Either way is completely fine. All right, so now we're just going to go ahead and reincorporate that right back into our overall wine there. All that good juice. Always amazed with how much wine comes out of the fruit. All right, so you can see there we have about 2 3/4 gallons of our total wine here. At least the bottom little portion here is going to be some gross lees from the fermentation process. So I have here at least, these are 1 gallons. That's a half gallon. So we have 2.5 gallons here. I don't expect to get any more than that. So let's go ahead and get it racked and see how that goes. I'm not going to bore you with the racking details. Just keep in mind that as this comes down, you want to follow that with your auto siphon. Do not drop it to the bottom of the bucket. Let it go and come back when it's done. You want to make sure that you keep that auto siphon all the way down, just like that as the wine goes down. And then tilt the bucket to avoid those gross lees at the bottom. All right, so we're all done racking. There we have our gross lees, and you can see those a little bit of blueberries down there that made it out of the must bag, and that happened whenever we built the must. If you remember that, they just kind of made it past while I was crushing it. Made it down the sidewall between the must bag and the bucket. Not a big deal. There is a few particulates of fruit that made it into our rack here, even with trying to stay away from it. They still kind of made it in there. So on the end of the auto siphon, see here, that's what I generally use when it's just gross lees. There is a cap that comes for an auto siphon, and that will keep some of those big particulates of that fruit out. I just didn't use it on this time because I never use it, honestly, because all my fruit's always in a must bag. So I'm so used to having it in a must bag that I didn't put the cap on. So learn from my mistakes here. Had I put that cap on, that fruit, those bigger pieces of fruit wouldn't have made it into the secondary vessel. So I'll get those out. Won't be a big deal, but just something to note. It does have a cap. Use it if you've got fruit in there or you're not using a must bag. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and add in our bentonite and get them shooken up, put a cap on. All we're going to do is we have a 1/2 cup of water in each of our mason jars here. This is very hot. We're going to put in 2 teaspoons. This is a 1/2 teaspoon measure. And just sprinkle that around. Don't pour it all in the middle, otherwise it will all just stick to itself. Bentonite is extremely hard to get well incorporated into water. That's why we heat up the water, put it in a mason jar, and then shake it pretty vigorously. So, all right, so that's going to be kind of the consistency that you want there. All I'm going to do, this is good for up to 5 gallons, so it doesn't hurt it if you put in all of this into 1 gallon. It's not going to hurt anything. But if you put in too little, it can have a negative effect. So what we're going to do is I'm going to just split this between these 2 1 gallons, and then I'm going to pour this right into our 1/2 gallon, not the whole thing, but just some of it. And that's all I'm trying to do is just get that bentonite in there. Then we're going to shake it up. We're going to put a lid on each one of these. That's why I love little 1 gallon things, because I don't have to use a stirring wand. And then we're just going to agitate it, get it really incorporated, and then it's going to sit for the next 7 days at least, and then we'll check on it. All right, there you have it. They're back on the fermentation table in the wine room, and here they will sit. One thing I just wanted to point out that I didn't earlier, Riesling wine is white, kind of like its partner over here. So it's going to be pretty cool. My wife's come up with some pretty cool names for this that you guys will have to wait till the end to see. But Rieslings are traditional white wine. It's going to be a red wine, which is going to be a really cool spin on a traditional wine there. So, all right, so it's been 8 days, and we're going to go ahead and get our Riesling wine racked again and start the next stage of our refining process, which is going to be our super clear. This one I'm going to do slightly different than usual, fine-tuning my process here. So you can see the bentonite has pulled out a lot of lees here, which is excellent. What we're looking for when this is to be done, we're not looking for absolute clarity. You could leave this for the next 30 days and it would definitely clear up. But you can see there, flashlight behind here, you can see all the way through this. It's still a little cloudy, but overall, pretty good. So what we're looking for when bed night is done is there's still going to be a few bubbles every now and then that kind of rise to the top. What we're looking for is not a rush of bubbles still coming up to the top, or that CO2 being released, or the interaction with the bentonite. Because when we go on to our next stage, the super clear phase, to go ahead and refine this, what will happen is all that CO2 will trap the super clear, and it will actually suspend it and keep it cloudy for a very long time, almost indefinitely. You can fix it, but it's a real pain in the butt. So what we're looking for is those bubbles to essentially stop, is what we're at. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna rack this today into new vessels, get it off the lees. You can see I have my new clean sanitized vessels over here. I suppose, or I suspect, basically with the lees that we have here, probably gonna end up with our 2 full gallons here, using again our little half gallon to fill up that headspace. We might have a little bit of a mason jar left, and we'll see what that is. With that being said, I'm not going to record the racking process. I think you guys have seen that enough. And go check out my other videos. We have racking in this video. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get these into clean vessels, and then we're gonna discuss a little bit about what's next. One thing I did want to mention about the racking before I move on, if you remember, a little bit of the fruit escaped the must bag and got into our secondary here, which is absolutely fine. And that's because I didn't use the cap. I don't ever use the cap because, generally speaking, there's no fruit in my must whenever I rack it. So, or in that wine for that first rack, but a little bit of fruit made it in there. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and put the cap on this time. That'll prevent any of this fruit from getting into our next stage here. So just one little pointer there. If you got something like that, some fruit that escaped, put your cap on, it'll make your life easier. All right, so our racking is done, and as expected, we got exactly what we expected. So we got our 2 gallons. I'll take a little bit from this one and put it over here so it's evened out with my wine thief. And our little 32 ounce here. I love these little additions like this when it's a half gallon or a little 32 ounce, because it allows me to keep my wines topped off during different processes of racking and things of that nature. So just because it's a little doesn't mean it's not important, right? All right, and here's what's left with our lees there. So that's what we left in there. This one is pretty thick, and you can see by using that cap, all that fruit was left behind, that it escaped the bag, and it's no longer in our wine. So one thing I did want to show you, I call it the scooper. When I do have something that is stuck and it's already in a carboy, and you have these thin necks like this, that's hard to get anything in it to get out of it. I just created this a while ago. Essentially, it's just a spoon and bent in a specific direction, just like that. And what it allows me to do is to actually stick it in the neck of any of these carboys, stick it straight down, go in, and then drag it up the glass and get it out. Because sometimes it's just one little pesky fruit that makes it in there, or something just kind of hanging out on top that got through the racking process. So it seems super simple and stupid, but this is actually a really helpful tool. So just something I wanted to point out there. Go ahead and add in our first part of our super clear, our Keto. I'm just going to split this between the 2 1-gallon containers here. This little mason jar, I'm not going to do that with. It'll clear up on its own. It's a small enough volume. I'm not worried about it. So we're going to go ahead and split this, get that in there. We're going to wait an hour or more, and then we'll come back and add our second part. One thing to point out is when you do add this in, make sure that you agitate your wine again. So I'm going to put a cap on that. After I put this in, I'm going to shake it up and make sure it gets nice and incorporated. All right, nice and agitated, incorporated. That's why I love these little caps with the 1 gallons. We'll be back in an hour. All right, so it's been over an hour. We're going to go ahead and add our second part here, which is the chitosan. We're going to add this very slowly using our funnel here. All I've done is I'm going to split this into the 2 1-gallons here, just like we did with the Keto. This is there's 60 milliliters of fluid in here with 1 ounce of warm water that's used to dissolve the chitosan. So 1 ounce warm water, then the chitosan itself, nice and dissolved. I'm going to put in, each one of these is 10, so 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Since we're at 60, I love these measured cups or glasses. So since we're at 60 milliliters, I'm going to put in 30 into the one and 30 into the other. So let's go ahead and do that. Nice slow pour, count to 30 as you're pouring it in. All right, so now it's in both of our 1 gallons. We're going to go ahead and wait. Should see a pretty dramatic difference in the next 24 to 48 hours. Look at the clarity on this. Let's see if I can get this a little bit closer for you. I'm just going to use my flashlight here. But look at that. Clear. Nice of them all the way There we go. So that clarity there, I always use that flashlight to kind of look at any particulates that might still be in there. These are good enough. What I'm going to do now is it's 24 hours before bottling. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and filter this wine. You will be racking this wine. So I'm going to go off and filter this. I just sterile filter my wine. But all you need to do is just rack it. Then we'll come back and add in our potassium sorbate and our potassium metabisulfite, candom tablets, etc., to prepare this for bottling in 24 hours. All right, so hopefully you've racked your wine. I went ahead and filtered mine. You can see this is one of the reasons, and if you go watch some of my videos with the sterile filter process that I go through, one, besides making a very clear, clean wine, the clarity gets improved. I would say that maybe the polish overall, you just see that beautiful polish there. Very, very interested and excited for this wine. This Riesling that is traditionally white that we made red. Wait till you see the name that my wife came up with. I love it. I went and tested my sulfites specifically, so I know exactly what I needed to add in here, which was 0.7 grams per container here. But what you're gonna do to make this very simple, no math involved, you're just gonna take one candom tablet, crush that candom tablet, put some wine into your mason jar, and put that one candom tablet into this mason jar with your potassium sorbate. We're gonna get that dissolved, and then we're gonna put it back into the wine and incorporate it. So you will not see me putting the candom tablet in because I already sulfited these wines, but you will put in one candom tablet per 1 gallon. All right, so I got some wine pulled out there. All I'm gonna do now is put in a half a teaspoon of our potassium sorbate per 1 gallon container. And it's just easier. You can pour it right into the wine, but it's just easier to get it dissolved up a little bit. Remember, at this point, oxygen is our enemy, so I would rather disturb this and agitate this more than I want to disturb my entire batch here. And you'll see that I do the same thing when we go to back sweeten this Riesling tomorrow in 24 hours. I will put a sugar into mason jar and get that dissolved with a little bit of wine and pour it into the overall batch, again, to prevent that oxidation or needless. I'm only gonna show you guys on camera just one of these because it's the exact same process for the second, but that looks to be nice and dissolved. We'll go ahead and get our lid off here. Pour in our potassium sorbate. Remember, you already put in your sulfites as well, or they're at least in your mason jar with your potassium sorbate. Our sanitized stirring wand here. And then I'm just gonna slowly stir that in. I'm not looking to really agitate the wine too much. Just kind of getting that nice and incorporated. The good part is that it's gonna have 24 hours between the sulfites and the potassium sorbate to get fully incorporated into this wine before it has to wrestle with the sugar to stop the yeast, or wrestle with the yeast rather, any residual yeast, to ensure fermentation doesn't take place. So that's it. Our potassium sorbate is in, our sulfites are in, and we're gonna go ahead and wait 24 hours and it will be time to bottle. Best day. All right, it is everybody's favorite day. I know it's my favorite day, and today is bottling. It's been 24 hours since we added in those sulfites and that potassium sorbate, so we can go ahead and back sweeten without the risk of blowing any corks off. One thing I want to mention is I make a lot of wines and meats, so I had to actually go back and look at my notes for this. I maintain notes on everything I ever make. The interesting part is if you want a fast wine, I made the must on this on November 9th, 2025. Today is November 28th, 2025, so if you do the math, we got this from must to bottle in 19 days. Now this is only gonna benefit from age. We're gonna go ahead and do a little tasting at the end and I'll talk about it. One thing I wanted to point out as a reminder is this is a white wine base, although it's red because of the fruit that we put into it, it's a white wine base, which means that the lack of tannin, it's not gonna need to age as long to get there. A lot of winemakers, especially commercial winemakers, love white wines because they get to market a lot faster. The lack of tannins means they don't have to age as long, which means you can get that nice flavor and nose out of these in a lot less aging time. So I'm very excited for this. This is a great one. So what I'm gonna do with this one is go ahead and fully back sweeten it, make it a nice, sweet, semi-sweet Riesling wine with this nice acidity that we got in from the triple berry blend that we put in. With that being said, I am gonna add a little bit of sugar. Even when you're dealing with fruit wines and even a lot of grape varietals, depending unless it's a Cabernet, and even in that case, sometimes adding just a little bit of sugar into the wine is very helpful. It makes the fruit pop, it gives it a little bit more weight, a little bit more viscosity in the mouth, so it doesn't feel like you're drinking just water, that's just alcohol water, and it makes it feel better overall. So a little bit of sweetness will just add to the overall balance of the wine. So let's go ahead and get our bottles on the bottle tree here, get them sanitized, and get this started. So I don't generally record the boring parts where I'm sanitizing things like that, but I did want to showcase this just a little bit. This is how easy this is to sanitize your bottle, just like that. Sanitizer goes in, it shoots in, you hang it on the tree, you grab another bottle, and just like that, you have a sanitized bottle. And imagine, this holds, I think, 45 bottles. So you can do this very quickly. It's almost home professional style without a whole bottle line, if that makes sense. This is awesome. And if you're doing a lot of bottling at home, it is really a must have. Otherwise, you're stuck in the sink with a plunger type cleaning brush, and it's just a pain in the butt. But this, link down in the description below if you're interested. All right, so I normally don't record the whole back sweetening process, but I did get asked about that. So we're gonna do the dry one first. I'm gonna start, I have my scale here, and I'm gonna add in, everything's been sanitized again. I'm gonna add in here about 50 grams. There we go, 50 grams on the dot. So now I'll take the wine. Remember, oxygen is kind of our enemy at this point. Not kinda, it is. So what we're gonna do is use my fancy wine thief here, otherwise known as a turkey baster. And we're just gonna put that right into our mason jar. And the reason I'm putting it in here is so that I can shake it up and dissolve it and agitate just a little bit of wine and not the whole batch itself. All right, and that's about enough. If we were doing a larger batch, I'd probably need more wine than that. We'll put the lid back on there, put this lid on here, tighten that up. And all I'm gonna do is just gently shake this back and forth until I can see that pretty much all the sugar is dissolved. It doesn't need to be perfect, but then I'll get it in there and I'll use my mixing wand here that's been sanitized, and I'll stir that into the rest of the wine. One thing that I do suggest, and before I pour this in, before I forget, let's just do it right now while that's dissolving, is I'm gonna take a little bit of this out. I always have 2 tasting glasses. One is the original wine, and the other one is gonna be what we're working with and how we're sweetening it. So that way we know what the original tasted like and how far away we're getting away from that original. And you can do this in smaller test batches where you take 100 milliliters out, add in a specific amount of sugar and go that route. But me personally, this is just how I do it. All right, so that sugar is pretty well dissolved. Let's go ahead and get that into our batch here. Remember, that's 50 grams of sugar. Just pour it right in there. So we're nice and dissolved there. Go ahead and take our stirring wand out. We're gonna pull a little bit of our sweetened but dry wine out here. All right, so we have the original and we have the 50 grams of sugar here. So let's go ahead and taste the original. I'm kind of excited for this. I haven't really tasted this. On the nose, it's like bright red berry, and you can almost smell the brightness in it. Well done to Nature's Best, I think is the name of that company. I'm gonna link all the stuff I use, including the Riesling concentrate and all that stuff in the description below. It'll be in my Amazon storefront. That's good. It's the finish doesn't just leave your mouth right away. So it's kind of what we would call like a medium finish. It's not a long finish, but it's a solid medium finish. It sticks around for a little bit before it goes down. This really is like, this is my passion for wine and for meat. And I hope you guys that are watching, if you don't have a passion, you develop one. If you already have one, you know what I'm talking about. When you get that sip of what you've been anticipating for several days, weeks, even months, maybe even years, and it hits just like you thought it would. That's great. One thing I wanted to point out when I'm tasting it, you'll see me kind of swish it a little bit. I'm not just drinking it. I'm kind of blowing it back and forth in my mouth and I'm aerating it. And that's to get the full flavor of the wine over my tongue, to see what I'm really doing. That's actually, I'm gonna leave it right there. This is more of my taste, just a hint of sweetness to make those fruits come out a little bit more and that Riesling come out. But that's good. I really like this. Let's go ahead and sweeten this up. This is more of the crowd pleaser, the one that I just came back from Thanksgiving yesterday. And let me clear out my glass here. Oh, that's good. One of the things that's interesting is I came back from Thanksgiving yesterday. I took about 4 bottles of wine in total out to my family's house. Several people there. I took our mango green chili. I took our Christmas Rudolph's Blush, which is our cranberry orange zest. I also took our wine that's called Unprofessional, which is equal parts of cranberry and strawberry and raspberry. And I got really good reviews on it. One lady that was there that does not like mangoes or green chili at all, and she was certain that she was not gonna like the wine. And my mother asked her, my mom told her, just try it, see if you like it. And she tried it and she fell in love with it because mango, when it's fermented, tastes very, very similar to a white table grape. And the green chili came out really good in that. Wasn't too much, wasn't too spicy, really good. But anyways, it's just the fun part of making our own wines and meads, right? It's just sharing it with others, making it how we want it, getting it how you want it. If you can't tell, I really just enjoy it. So let's go ahead and get this sweetened up. We started with 50 grams in here. I know what level that brought us to. Remember, I have my standard that's right here still. So let's go ahead and give that a taste, just a reminder. Let's go ahead and add in 75 grams to start. We'll see what that gets us. That's 25 grams more than we did here. I imagine we're gonna probably be adding in more. All right, so our 75 grams of sugar, let's see what we got. I swear, the more sugar that you add as it goes in, and a lot of these wines are back sweetened, if not most of them. The more sugar that goes in, the more fruit you'll start to smell. It's the oddest thing, but it's just the way that it works. All right, it's not as sweet as we want it to be yet. That acidity is still kind of overtaking the show here. There's a little bit of that brightness in there. And we want to add a little bit more sugar in to start to balance out that acidity. Remember, this is going to be kind of our crowd pleaser. This is more for our dry folks. This is going to be more of the crowd pleaser. Most people that don't like wine, don't like alcohol like wine or mead, when you sweeten it up a little bit, you'll get a little bit more positive feedback. All right, so we added in 75 grams of sugar and then 50 and then 50, so we're at 175 grams of sugar. And that's what we're gonna stop at. I think this is what I would refer to as a sweet Riesling. It's not too sweet though. It still maintains a lot of that structure, that berry, that brightness. The sugar is not overcoming the acidity, so there's a good balance in there. So let's go ahead and get this bottled up. All right, real quick before I get these into the bottle, I told you I'd give you a specific gravity reading. Remember, I started off at 0.993. So you might not have fermented down as dry as I did, or you might have fermented drier. But just doing the math here, I went from 0.993 to exactly 1.000. So this brought this up to a generally dry wine. Think about that. When your primary fermentation, when you get down to 1.000, you consider that a dry wine as if you've fermented to dry. So basically that 50 grams of sugar just brought this up to what we would consider dry. So 0.007 points is what I added in specific gravity from my original specific gravity. And this one, we started at 0.993 as well, but we went up to 1.016 total for our specific gravity ending after sweetening. So that took it to 0.023 in terms of increase. So we started at 0.993. We increased that specific gravity by 0.023 to achieve the sweetness that I think is going to be appropriate here for this particular Riesling. So now let's get it in the bottle. All right, so we have our stack for dry, our stack for sweet. I'm going to go ahead and fill these up. All the items that I use in this, the bottles, the small bottles, the full-size bottles, the bottling wand here that you see that you push down and gets you a perfect pour here into your bottle, right there. The auto siphon, all of these things, to include the corker over there in the long way, are included in the Amazon storefront that I just created. It's all there for your perusing, so go check it out. And with our floor corker, I'll just show you this last one here of our dry. This is why I love this thing. Boom, just like that. It's adjustable, push down the spring, comes out. Just awesome stuff. So somebody asked how I make my little labels. This is exactly how I do it. It's very cheap printer, this little Nelco here. And I put the information that I want on. I already printed out the dry. This is for the sweets. Before I put on my actual illustrated label, this is what goes on the majority of my bottles until I'm gonna take them out for consumption, etc. Friends, family, what have you. These are what I put on, and that's the information that I like to put on there. So there's the name, Triple Berry Riesling Sweet, and the bottle date. The parts per million is the sulfites, 3.22 pH, and an ABV of 13.51%. Let's go ahead and get the actual label on now. I also got asked about my labels. This is just standard label paper that's adhesive. It's not waterproof or anything fancy. Whenever I'm just giving this out, friends, family, having fun with the family and drinking these and consuming these, we make our own here. We are trying to get a small winery off the ground. But this is what we're using for right now. This would change if it was commercial, but for home, this is perfect. It's cheap, it's affordable. These are down in the description below too. And I'll show you exactly what it looks like once it gets on. All right, and then lastly, all we're gonna do is use our heat gun here. Again, guys, all this stuff is in the description below in that Amazon storefront. It makes it really easy for you. I had to go find all this as I was learning the process over the years, but it's all down there. This is really simple. You're just gonna hold it with the finger there. It immediately seals to the bottle. And then we're gonna slowly just turn the bottle, making sure not to burn it. Any little areas like this, just kind of push it down. You could also do this with like hot water, just bring it to a boil essentially and dip the bottle in it. All right, there we go. That's on. Let's go ahead and check them out. All right, so there you have it. We have our dry, and I love this. This is what the twist that my wife came up with, and this is her art here. As you know, traditional Rieslings are white. Noir is referring to the darkness or the red color in this, and it is a red twist on a classic white. I love the bottle, love the art here, the presentation here with the red wine dripping on the berries. It looks great. And then on the back, I just keep that informational sticker there. And this is just for long-term aging. And whenever I pull it out, I like to see what the pH is and things like that, the alcohol content, just to see as I'm drinking it, as it ages, I don't have to go refer to my notes. So looks really nice. As expected, we got 2 large full-size bottles, 4 of the smaller ones, and then 2 large, 4 of the smaller ones. And that's because we probably could have got another smaller one, but I have a glass here for tonight. And then I have about a half a bottle of the sweet in the fridge that's gonna be for consumption early on because it's got a lot of headspace, but we'll consume it, trust me, before it oxygenates. So there you go, the final Riesling Noir. All right, we've come to the end of the video. Thank you guys for hanging in there. Hopefully you're making your own triple berry Riesling with all the information I provided you. If you got something out of this, you learned something, or you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe if you really liked it. But at least hit the like button. It really does help out a small channel just trying to grow here. All the things that I use are in the Amazon store that's linked below. It makes it really easy for you guys. I just got accepted into the Amazon influencer program there. If you click on those links or you buy something, it doesn't cost you anything. You pay the actual price. I get a little bit of commission out of it. It helps me to make more wines and more meads. And there's must in fermentation stages and secondary and aging and glassware, even the Riesling bases and different juices and concentrates and stuff. So go check it out. Tell me in the comments what you guys think. In the meantime, you got to try this. Try making this. This is a great wine. Very easy. Cheers.